All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Bowman, Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs in the College of Education. And in partnership with Create for STEM, I am delighted that my office is sponsoring and coordinating this seminar series about teaching, learning, and generative AI. So the idea is to really help us cultivate a community of practice. And in the conversations we've had so far, I have really been impressed and amazed and inspired too by the number of folks who've engaged and the various ways in which we've engaged these conversations. So today we have a presentation by Dr. Lara Dixon, who joined us as our inaugural EPP Educator Preparation Program Director in August, and also Chris Kaiser, who has been a member of the college community and part of our teacher preparation program for many years. And this presentation I'm so excited about because this really gives us a window into what is happening in PK through 12 settings throughout the state. And of course, so much of our work in the College of Education engages these partners and helps our students become ready to teach and lead in these settings. And so this is wonderful for us to be thinking about. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Lara.
Thank you, Christine. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and the kind introduction. So I'm going to share my screen in a second so that we can get started. All right. So foremost, we're going to talk about how and why PK-12 uses generative AI, and then what it means for us at Michigan State University preparing teachers and future educational leaders. We are very fortunate today to have some PK-12 experts in the room who, at the end of the presentation, will have plenty of time to answer any questions that you have. They'll introduce themselves. You'll see them throughout the presentation. And please make certain that you note what you want to ask and who you want to ask it of. And we will allow that to be in the chat where Chris will monitor it and make sure your question is announced, or it'll just be an open discussion because at that point I will stop screen sharing. So we wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about ourselves. As Christine stated, I am new to Michigan State University and absolutely thrilled to be here. I'm the Director of Educator Preparation and Accreditation and Assistant Professor for K-12 Administration, and I'm the newly appointed Secretary and Treasurer of MAPEL. Chris?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Christopher Kaiser. I am an academic specialist here in the College of Education, Department of Teacher Education. I serve as the pre-internship coordinator in the secondary area, and also I am the secondary area, Lansing area internship coordinator.
Thank you. And just a little bit more about ourselves. My journey before I came to Michigan State University was 3 decades in PK-12. I was a teacher in the inner city in Ohio, loved it, English and music, assistant principal, an elementary principal, a high school principal in Michigan, an adjunct instructor at Saginaw Valley State University and guest lecturer for U of M, a director of partnerships and initiatives and director of PK elementary education. I've been a Gerstacker Fellow with Saginaw Valley, and I'm a mother and family member and community member. That's my daughter, Allie, who just turned 13. Chris?
Good morning, everyone. I began my journey in education about 3 decades ago as well. I was a high school teacher in the mid-Michigan area for 12 years. About the same time that I started there, I was one of the very first online instructors to launch what was then a very brand new endeavor, which was Michigan Virtual here in the mid-Michigan area. I taught there for 21 years. I then decided to head to Michigan State to work on a PhD, and I was a graduate assistant there, a Global Understanding Fellow in Botswana, until I accepted the secondary coordinator position. I've been ABD ever since then. Done a lot of traveling and some research, and I'm also a family and community member as a father of 5 with a recent daughter who just graduated from the teacher education program in music last year. She is now a choir director in Virginia.
Very nice. So as we talk about PK-12, for the last 2 decades, we have been future focused. We dream about what will our students need 30, 40 years from now. And are we doing everything in our power to prepare them for life that will demand different things? So in the middle of the screen, you see Delhi 3. And I just programmed everything that I have learned about what would be an audaciously amazing school in the future. And this is the picture image that Delhi created. It shows us learning from all different ages and various spaces where there's lots of choice and voice and freedom and exploration. And certainly everything is tech infused, but balances health and wellness and being outside. And I've been very fortunate. I was a member of MASSP and on their executive board, so you'll hear some examples from MASSP, and I have some of my colleagues on the call who will be a part of the Q&A. This October, I was able to meet and listen to Will Richardson, One Foot in the Future. And you know, his initiative is all about fearless inquiry, but he shared with us the importance of making certain we define what learning is. Now, as a high school principal a decade ago, my staff and community and students defined what we believed deep learning was, and then our students and staff made a video of it so that we could really make certain we all could see it, understand it, so that we could ensure it happened. And that's very powerful as we think about the future, because we need to understand what we believe deep learning is, how it's going to change in the future, the dispositions that students need and skills that they will need to have. And part of that conversation is always ensuring that we're reaching out to business, community, parents, students, and staff. Everyone's a part of that discussion and helps guide what we do now. I know you're all familiar with generative AI, but in PK, we write everything down so that it's very clear communication. And part of the process is to help our students, teachers, and leaders understand what it is, what it isn't. And the goal is to help our students navigate it for all of the cautions and limitations and biases, but more importantly, for all of the possibilities and benefits that it can help now and later. I will share that all of these slides are very meaty. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint. The PowerPoint has additional information for you to use later on at will. So in PK-12, we've been using AI for the last 16 years. These are various ways. It's not all encompassing. My favorite is for fun, but the reality is we use AI for all of our practices, processes, and certainly for learning. It is a part of what we do. However, generative AI is a game changer. I'll just give you 10 seconds to look at this slide in case something pops out that you might have questions later for our experts in the Q&A. So looking toward the future, we need to understand what people are saying. And generative AI has been the forefront of discussions for the last year. And we are certainly paying attention to the fact that some are prophesizing that 40% of jobs will no longer exist in 10 to 15 years, while others are saying this will be a boon for education and technology and health and agriculture as we move forward, which is not only important to PK, but certainly a part of what we do here at MSU. And so I do not like the wordiness of ChatGPT 4.0, so I call it C4. And I do that for humor, but also for brevity. And I do think it has changed the landscape. And I do intentionally mean C4, that it's blowing things up. Because for 2 decades, we have talked about the importance of getting people's attention and sparking an urgency for change. How do we change education in the PK world to ensure that we are future forward? And that is a very difficult process, but C4 is helping us find that urgency and impetus faster. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see so many of our leaders, our organizational leaders across the state have been doing amazing work at helping us navigate it, understand it, and have professional learning communities around it. And certainly all of their national organizations are providing support and learning as well. So these are just a few examples. There'll be a second page of examples that we are using generative AI in PK-12. We're using it to learn, to share, to create, to communicate, to connect. For me, what was most surprising was the amount of people who are using it for well-being, to help them not feel so isolated, to help them have balance and mental health and wellness. And so that will be something that we need to delve more into, because we know in the PK world, the last 10 years have changed significantly, where we have growing numbers of students and staff with anxiety and struggle with mental illness. And the big question will be, does this help? To what extent? Or are there areas that we need to navigate where we need to ensure that we still have that human connectivity, which would be my guess. Here is another page of just so many. This is not exhaustive. I didn't even put Grammarly and Otter that we're using here at Michigan State and so many others. But it gives you a sense of what our students and teachers and leaders are using. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Alcordi here. Angela is a colleague of mine, and we also shared the same dissertation chair. And she has been in the tech world throughout her career, and she's leading work around understanding generative AI and how it is being used in PK. She's been kind enough to share her draft chart below depicting how it's used. And she has these networks that she's discovered online and communicates with people, where there are hundreds of thousands of PK users sharing their work and learning together. And she's found a pattern that they're using generative AI to save time. And that time has been a theme across so many researchers and leaders in this area, where the goal is to be able to give you time to think, create, do, connect, and change the way you work. She also shared that they're using it to not only inspire themselves and their colleagues, but more importantly, students, because our love is always for our students. We love the adults too, but students take top priority, and to increase engagement. Kids have always gravitated to new things and technology and finding out what they can do. Here's another example of how a district administration team has used generative AI. In 2022, the Troy School District passed a very sizable bond. And to make certain that they're good stewards and forward thinking, they brought constituents of all levels, community members, board members, teachers, leaders, staff members, students, to learn and dream. And part of that dreaming was to have the opportunity to work with Fielding International and play with generative AI, look at what we're doing now, look at what is cutting edge and coming out. And how does this change the kind of school that we should have for our students? Another example also, I do not know why this does not want to advance. Here we go. Is also in Troy School District, but also in Oakland County. The ISD is very committed to STEM. and they have a STEMI bus, which has the latest, greatest technology. In 2021, that bus came to Troy Athens High School and all the schools in the entire county. And students were allowed to experience all different kinds of tech, including generative AI. And then based on school districts' socioeconomic first, because they want to prioritize students who need more, teachers could check out the tech and keep it for a month in their classroom to help give extended learning opportunities for students. But I thought it was important that you look at the timelines, because generative AI has been a part of PK-12 for a while, and it's so much more ubiquitous than many of us realize. Now, in full disclosure, this middle school student is my beautiful daughter who just turned 13, and she was invited to MASSP's conference, Catalyst 23, in October. She and a wide array of students were asked to share their thoughts. How do they use generative AI? Why do they use it? Are they using it through school or on their own? And what are their thoughts? And they also had the opportunity to sit down with table teams and have deep conversations. So to the entire group, my daughter shared, she's an artist and an author. That picture is one that she generated. She drew it herself. And then she wanted some inspiration. So she put into DALL-E 3 her ideas of what she was hoping to depict. And the image that DALL-E created then helped inspire her to redraw it, which this will then go into her book because it's a part of her story. But at the tabletop, she shared with superintendents and teachers and leaders across the state that she really believes schools need to give students more opportunity to learn in and out of school from across of all types of people, age and thoughts and abilities, so that they really can create and explore. She has a great school district. However, most of her generative AI, given her age, has been outside of school, and she would love to be a voice to change that. We do realize it is tied to funding. It's expensive. So this will be something that we'll have to think about as we look at equity and access moving forward. Now, we're very fortunate to have the superintendent from Ypsilanti Community Schools and assistant superintendent a part of this presentation today. And Carlos will be able to speak with everyone at the end. They're doing so much work with generative AI that they need 2 slides because it is literally for all students. Their teachers ubiquitously use Magic School, which is one of the top generative AI platforms that are being used to help create lesson plans and to communicate and give student feedback and translate information. They're also, all students have the opportunity to use Flexi Tutor. They're looking at ELA support through roadmaps, which is pictured on the screen there. And their English language learners have specific tools to help them and ensure that things are translated so that they have every opportunity to learn not only in their native language, but also in their adoption of English, no matter where they are on that journey. All of their students who are middle school and high school students do use C4, and their high school students are very much into creating and using robots, as well as Camingo. There are additional things given below. But this is a district that is looking at how do we take generative AI and make sure that our students, where they have high SES numbers, have an equal opportunity and all the skills they need to compete and survive and thrive in the future. We also are fortunate to have Ken and Justin from our Michigan Virtual Learning Institute with us today. They've given over 50 presentations, 75 presentations and trainings already this year. And they have built this lab so that all of the PK-12 leaders and teachers can have a professional learning network where they can come and try things, experiment, share their ideas and tools. And they've been kind enough to create so many guiding resources on policies and thoughts, and that QR release code will get you to all of their resources that they have been sharing. I have heard that superintendents say the ASU and GSV Summit is the best conference that they have been to. Some have said that they will never go to another conference, that they learned so much and network at such an extent level that this is the one to be at. So Michigan Virtual Learning Research is taking 40 superintendents and leaders and teachers across the state of Michigan to this year's summit and to their pre-show, which is called the Air Show. And the point of this is to take PK and university leaders and educators and have them meet with industry and thought partners who are really forwarding generative AI and say, how do we use this technology to ensure that we advance innovation and equity where everyone has a voice and has a seat at the table? MASSP has not only done their Catalyst 23, which had over 500 educators in the state of Michigan at it and leaders, but then they've given seminars consistently throughout the fall, and they'll be giving them well into the spring and beyond. They have a resource page where I have been able to download over 30 articles and thoughts and resources that really help me connect and learn faster. And I appreciate it beyond measure. So one of the researchers and thinkers that I was able to attend her webinar, Saba, really is the one who helped me understand that students are using generative AI for social emotional well-being and balance. Her research is showing that kids and adults, about 60% of users are using it in that platform. And she, like many, are saying, let's find ways to make sure we forward what we're able to do as humans, that we do not use generative AI in a way that limits us, but expands and honors what we can do, building our connectivity and collaboration, building our ability to look and refine and move things forward. She also believes that we should look at generative AI for time saving, that her goal is for everyone to find 8 hours of savings, an entire day of your week that is now open because generative AI is taking over mundane tasks, that it can do it quickly and efficiently and with high quality. Wouldn't that be amazing to have an entire day a week free to dream, imagine, create, connect, forward wellness? So at the university level, we're using generative AI, and you'll see some of the groups that I belong to. Cape Con, I went to the national conference in September. They had an entire session on how generative AI will be a part of accreditation. We need to understand it now, and we need to understand how it's going to change our practice, how we use it and adapt to it to show growth in our goals and our outcomes. MAPEL is creating a professional network so that professors can help each other understand it and understand how to help our students use it. Our students are already using it. Jada's here with her otter today. Thank you, Jada. And I was on a meeting with Jada and a couple other professors and her doctoral students. And we just happened to ask, how are you using it? And so her doctoral students shared generative AI like Claudia too, that they use more for data, and then they'll use C4 more for writing and input of ideas. And if you just ask your students, which I'm sure you all are, how they use it, that helps build our understanding as well. And the point is to explore. At DARTEP in November and December, they're encouraging us to continue to learn and embrace this learning and create professional networks. Chris and I both are looking at every single workshop they have so we can learn as much as we can. And so what does this mean for us at Michigan State University? It means that we need to help be future forward and help teachers, researchers, and students properly and impactfully use generative AI. And I've shared some ideas on ways that we might embrace and move forward our progress. I will give you 20 seconds just to look at that. So I know that generative AI will be with us for a long time, and I believe it will be incorporated in our imagined as we embrace our learning. So many people to thank. My colleagues on the screen either helped provide direct information, as you've seen, or they've helped give context of where I could learn more and resources. And we're all in this together, and I appreciate every single person that I get to work with and learn from. So thank you so much. Each of the people on this screen have been PK leaders on all different levels, from teachers to principals to superintendents to CEOs to heads of their national and state organizations. And the majority of them are able to join us for our Q&A. So what I'm going to do is pull up this screen for a second so you can see who they are. But when I take down this screen, I'm going to ask each of them, starting with Justin, and then Ken, and then Angela, Tom, Carlos, David, and Colin, to introduce themselves before we start our Q&A session. So I will stop screen sharing.
I'm gonna introduce myself because Justin, unfortunately, is at a training with MASSP. So it's great that our organizations can collaborate together on these topics. I'm Ken Durkin. I'm the Senior Director of the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute. I work with Justin Bruno, who's our AI strategist, just a recent role that we put into place with the development of the AI lab concept. Basically, MVLRI as an organization has been around since 2012. We're a part of Michigan Virtual, which has been around since 1998 and is most well known, as Chris was talking about, as a supplemental online course provider. In 2012, MVLRI was stood up to do academic research around best practices, promising practices in blended and online learning, which we've done. We produced a lot of guides that have been very helpful for school districts looking to move into the online learning space. And in 2019, we revised the way we were working to say, what's practical application look like, and how do we get out in front of some of these future issues? So as somebody who's worked in ed tech for years, for 15 years at the College of Education at Michigan State, and then here at Michigan Virtual, it was really, AI was on the radar, and we've been working on it for the last 6 years, doing research studies, looking at AI implementation. So when generative AI hit, in November of 2022, when ChatGPT was released by OpenAI, we were able to turn around and demo some of the functionality right away, because we've been focused on how to integrate it and basically protect ourselves as an online learning environment from disruption, because we're just right for it. So that's been a really interesting story. And I think why we're 5 seconds ahead of a lot of people, I think it's similar with MASSP, where we've had some skin in the game for a while, and then turning around and being able to work with our networks to help them orient themselves and then try to make decisions has been very helpful.
Thank you, Ken. Angela?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Alcordi. I'm Associate Professor of Ed Leadership Studies at the National College of Education, National Louis University, and that is primarily out of Chicago. I teach online in the areas of learning sciences, instructional technologies, and at leadership. So generative AI has been an extension of my work in instructional technologies, and really fascinated to see how people are using it, not only to enhance their practice, but really happy to see that people are leaning in, to be more creative and leveraging it, and also taking some time to, as Dr. Lara said, to address their well-being by saving time. So
Thank you. Tom?
I can find my mute button. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Leitz. I am the Associate Director for Training and Development at MASSP. I am a former principal of about 15 years at a couple of different schools, and I'm a early tech adopter. And so my role in this was really to try to start bridging the gaps between the philosophical challenges and legal challenges that are here and what our principals are dealing with on a daily basis. So I take that perspective both from a leadership perspective as well as from how does this work with teachers and getting your staff to move past that fear principle about using AI and start thinking of it as a tool both for them and for their students where it is obviously where appropriate. So yeah, a lot of different lenses on this one and happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Tom. Carlos?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Dixon, for this opportunity. I'm very fortunate. I'm the assistant superintendent in the best place you want to work, which is Ypsilanti Community Schools. I have an amazing superintendent, Alina Zachary-Ross. It's just a jewel to work with, and we're here every day to serve our children and our communities. But one of the things that I find is the whole perspective of how do we do with, not do to, for, not to people. So one of the biggest things that we are here is that we all jump into the opportunity to expose. We serve a large EL population, special needs students, and a large population of Black and Brown students. So one of the things that myself being Hispanic, one of the things that I noticed right away is, hey, I'm having fun with this stuff, right? And so is how do you share the wealth and share the joy here? So is sitting with kids and in this journey is become an everyday thing. Every Monday I send to the staff the AI Monday Playground, which is a tool for you to explore, at your convenience. We do AI training for staff and invite them in the evening to join us online. And then we're building a whole team of youth ambassadors, AI, right? So, these initiatives are all, how do you tackle from all angles? Having our sessions with our administrators and making sure that they're utilizing the tools. Monica, Otto, all the tools that can be very helpful, etc. But I think the joy here is just having fun. This is a great time in education for us to think differently and to really embrace this work and not operate out of fear. So I would say to you, the biggest thing that I'm doing is building the capacity of our staff and making sure that we're moving in the right direction to support our students.
Thank you, Carlos. Dave.
It's like a pop quiz. Dave, you're up. I love it. Dave Richards, former superintendent, now serving as a executive strategist for Michigan Virtual, but my primary role really is serving as the executive director of the Future of Learning Council, which is a growing number of districts across the state coming together. I think we're at about 64 right now, districts and ISDs, and we've only been rolling for about 2 years. So it's been a pretty phenomenal growth, but really a gathering of like-minded leaders getting together, talking about how do we design new models of learning? How do we embrace flexibility, embrace choice? Obviously disruptive technologies like AI, to the point where, getting folks to really think about new models of school without blowing up the existing system, and not saying that our schools are broken, just that society has a new ask of what learning looks like and how do we become proactive with that. So Excited to serve in that role, but also this conversation. And this is a great lineup that you've been able to pull together, Dr. Dixon. It's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm just honored to know you all and have you here with me. And so Colin is our last to introduce ourselves, and then it's just open conversation. Colin.
Good morning, Colin Rittmaster, Deputy Executive Director with the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. I'm a former elementary teacher, both general and special education. And then I was a middle level assistant principal and principal before coming into the high school as a high school principal for several years. And really, pre-AI, I'm a product of special education. I didn't know how to learn. I didn't learn to read and write and speak until after third grade. And one of the things that assistive technology allowed me to do is over time engage with my peers. And so when you think about AI, how can we actually modernize our schools in a way that we can actually individualize and personalize instruction in there? And so one of the things actually we're working with Michigan State University and several other Big Ten and R1 research institutes around is around how do we actually leverage the AI in a way to provide students immediate instruction around things that matter to them, as well as feedback, knowing that we can't scale people at the rate that we can scale AI. And given the shortages within the teacher pipeline, how can we actually leverage these tools to actually support teachers so that schools can be a desirable place again, rather than being overburdened and overworked with so many different pieces that way? And so part of our work with this is really around how do we leverage those tools so that teachers, because we know, unfortunately, there's not a highly qualified or highly effective teacher in every classroom across our state and nation. And too many times we have people who are not even certified covering classrooms because we don't have people to put them in there. And so part of the project we work with K-12 outreach and supply chain management there at Michigan State and others around is actually providing tools and resources to schools that they can use in those situations, and then replicating those pieces in ways that make sense to people. So we're excited to work with people from across our state and nation around this work, and look forward to the conversation.
Colin, you speak to our heart. Thank you. All right. Chris is going to help us with the chat and with the discussion. The floor is everyone's. Okay, while you're contemplating, I see you all need wait time. I was a teacher. I can give you wait time. So while you think of the questions that you want to ask, I will screen share just again to show you the end of the presentation so that when we are done talking, we do not have to go back to the presentation. So at the very end, which Chris is going to make sure you all get a copy, I have resources from places that helped inform what's going into this presentation. And then I just wanted to thank you all sincerely for being here and spending this time with us. So that being said, now is our time to spend time together. So who would like to ask the first question? What are you thinking?
And I have shared a PDF of the slides in the chat with everyone so far.
I have a question.
Thank you, Jada.
So hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jada Phelps. I'm an assistant professor at Michigan State. I teach up-and-coming principals. So I just wondered a couple of things. In the back of my mind is that I know AI is biased. I know that it is very Euro-centered, and it's going to draw knowledge from that paradigm. One of the things that stood out to me was I was working with one of our education librarians, and she asked AI about children's books, top children's books for the last decade or so, and it generated a list of very not so diverse authors with not so diverse stories. So I'm using AI. I'm trying to counter that in a way by trying to make considerations around being generative, around being culturally responsive, thinking about issues of social justice. But I wondered how you all go about informing your stakeholders that you work with in your respective districts, and your teachers and your students, of course, that it is that in general, it is bias, right? And then how are you steering them, preparing them for getting this bias information? And then basically, like, I guess that's where I want to start, is what are you all doing to kind of counter that, knowing that it is making these decisions based on a very Euro-centered paradigm?
It's such a great question, Dr. Phelps. Thank you so much for bringing that up. It's so critical as we move into this new phase. So if any of our guests could speak to that, we'd appreciate it.
I would love to, Dr. Phelps. One of the things that we've done here is, including our superintendent recently, we were at NASB, and she presented on this same issue, right? And one of the biggest pieces that, 2%, only 2% are African Americans who are AI, who are working in this platform, right? Compared to the large, it's pretty much very white male driven, pretty much. So the beauty, never before, with when we look at cultural responsiveness in relationship of having people prepare and train in this area, is so much more needed now than ever before, because the simple reason, not only for Black and brown, but also for women, to be very honest. So in essence, I think at this moment in time, I think it's important that we look at the platform and understand that, hey, it has its weaknesses, and how do we utilize this opportunity to work with our students. So one of the biggest things that we do here is we talk to our staff, we talk to our students, and that there's gaps and there's challenges, but that this is when you need to step up, and how do we work collaboratively to change that trajectory. So the perspective is, how do we prepare a nation, do you follow me, of very diverse students so that they can co-create the new, like if you look at ChatGPT, you could have a wall, you follow me, where university or whatever platform, let's say YCS, could develop their own safe spaces of content, right? But the perspective is how we prepare a generation of students that are ready to go in that direction. One of the things that we do here is, even the diversity, since you mentioned books and whatever, during COVID, we spent over $150,000 to really diversify every library in the school and classrooms, instead of with literature that looks like our students, right? And so in essence, I think it's important that we realize that it's a journey, but on the other hand, it's keeping this at the forefront of those conversations. So I applaud you for raising that question, because a lot of times it goes unnoticed. And then right now we know that, hey, there are gaps there, and that the content that will get produced, we have to challenge it. But then it gives opportunity for our students to, Black and brown students and everyone else who's in this love for this work, to raise the issue. So thank you.
I'd like to build on that in a way that we also have to recognize that our current curriculums are not as diverse. To what Carlos said about, they actually used COVID dollars to diversify their library. And that was only, a couple of years ago. So imagine now, every one of us on this webinar now, our childhood experiences in schools may not have been so diverse. It may actually reflect that Eurocentric piece. And so I think we have to first recognize or accept that our resources that we tap into within our K-12 systems, and what ChatGPT, particularly the 3.5 versions, really tap into, are really what's available right now. So think about who's curating and posting and or publishing right now. And so we know that they're not very diverse or inclusive in that matter. And they share a very slanted perspective on history and peoples. So that's the first part that I think is just recognizing that. So the same things we need to do with and without AI are very similar that way. The difference is, with AI, it happens so rapidly, and because it's spit out by a computer, like Googling it became a verb, that we take it as fact, right? So if it's in a textbook, we used to believe it as fact, and now we're being challenged to think differently, that maybe the textbook is based on who the author was, or who the time period was, or what the conflict was. And so I think those same strategies need to be applied to technology and what comes through on those pieces, and helping our students be more critical thinkers versus just consumers of information, where they sit and spit back to people answers from the textbook or answers from ChatGPT. The other thing I think to keep in mind is that much of the work with AI right now, because it takes so many millions and billions of pieces of data, is that it's just scouring the internet and it's putting it together. And much of the work, and because of its expense, is because of that open system from that lens. More and more people are starting to work in more closed gardens. So rather than an open garden where every piece of information comes in and it's taken as equal value because it's not reasoned yet, think about some of the work that's going on now around closed gardens, where it's being populated with that. So when students are searching, it's within that closed space, so that it's limiting them from some of those others, but it's also then bringing to the forefront a much more diverse piece. And so that's part of, even with the work we're doing with Michigan State around food supply chains and shocks and the curriculum there. How do we make sure that that comes from diverse perspectives? What does it look like in Iowa versus Nevada versus New Jersey or New York or Florida, and so on? And so being able to look at that within our country, and then going beyond that, what does it look like in the Middle East right now when we talk about food scarcity versus within Hollywood, right? Like, there's different pieces of that. And I think those are pieces we need to be mindful of.
I'm gonna add on to what Colin's saying, in the sense that those open garden versus closed garden kind of places, and where you'll get a diversity within that. There's also emerging research around the fact that we bring our own unconscious bias to how we prompt AI systems, and they're eager to please. They're very happy to give us the answer that we're hoping to get. So based on how we interact with them, we're bringing our own bias. And so if we're asking an ill-formed or bias-laden question in what we're asking it to respond to, it will try to please us by echoing back, the answer that we were trying to get at. So I think that's one of those things that's going to be a whole new set of research in how we bring that to the table itself, in working with and asking the AI to do specific tasks. So that's going to be really critical in that, what Colin's talking about, in terms of how people are setting up their kind of garden walled AI systems, or what data they're using to build on top of these larger models. And so that'll be interesting. And in the end, this idea that AI, how we work with computers has fundamentally changed, and how we talk to them, ask them to do things, request and set up, that's all going to be a digital literacy skill that students need to learn pretty quickly. And so this AI literacy, which is an extension of digital literacy that I feel that we've been struggling with for years with students, is going to be even more hypercritical, because they have to be able to interact with systems and then be able to critically think through what the output is, and if it's what they expected. And if they just satisfice, it will be a real problem in the long term.
One thing that I think I would like to highlight, though, that, it's an English language learner. Even though I'm very proficient in English, for example, right? But my English at times becomes very awkward, right? For the native English speaker. And because I overthink things, right? But what I have found that how I've leveraged ChatGPT, do you follow me, and Bard, etc., and even Grammarly, whatever, it has just helped me to pay closer attention to the patterns of the English language. Do you understand? So in essence, I've actually increased my repertoire of proficiency now to an even higher level, and the way that I would awkwardly said something now, because of Grammarly and the repeated use that I use it, I know the patterns now. And so in essence, it really helps the learner to really accelerate their learning, because at the end of the day, you're the one who makes that determination, whatever. I'm very, very good in prompts, for example. And so I get from ChatGPT, was what you put in there is what you get the output you get. And so what I've learned in all the tools that I use is that it's made me a much, much more proficient person in developing prompts that are very accurate, very succinct, and gets me. I mean, I could just tell you the last number of grants that I've gotten, really every part I've actually done with ChatGPT or et cetera. And I've actually got the funded and comments of how wonderful it is and whatever. But I just didn't do it there. You turn it into a Google Doc, and then you could just make those modifications as you see it fit. You understand? So in essence, it really saves not only time, but it gets you to think differently. Do you follow me, et cetera? And it's a great brainstorm. But I think when I'm looking for Black and brown students, et cetera, that is an opportunity to allow our students to leverage. Two books that I use very faithfully with teachers, and one that I really love is the AI for Educators by Matt Miller. The strategies here are designed by teachers, instead of for teachers, but you could, no matter if it's kindergarten, first grade, doesn't matter, but the tools are just amazing to energize staff. The other one, of course, is the ultimate guide to by Daniel Fitzpatrick, and I know that he's presenting at the II conference. But I just think these tools are tools that really allow K-12 educators to think differently, because right now, I'm not going to operate out of fear. I'm going to dive deeper in there and create an environment where we're exploring. You follow me? I know that there's a whole lot that's going to come out of it, but by exploring and having people have those opportunities, especially our Black and brown students and every other student in this district, no matter what, I don't want people to operate in fear. I want you to go and see, hey, and discover. And even when we do training, you should see how much fun the staff has exploring the tools, right? And so the synergy there is worth, I don't know, it's just worth exploring and tapping in there. I didn't realize that at this age, I'm old as hell, and I can just tell you very honestly that I'm having fun. You understand? And I noticed that the people who are in my team, they're older, they're my age, and they were the one leading it here in this district. So age is not a limit here. So I think it's how do we build capacity and show others, hey, look what you're capable of doing and beyond, so.
Yeah, Dr. Dixon, if I could really quick, just to go back to Dr. Phelps' question, I think it was a really good one. And piggybacking a little bit on what Ken said, I think one of the real opportunities for AI is not that it's an information giver. In fact, I think one of the best pieces of advice I try to give to folks is don't ask AI a question that you don't know the answer to or don't want to research the answer to, because that bias is very real. But 20 years ago, Google was the awful evil that was going to give everybody the answer. 20 years before that, it was calculators that were going to ruin mathematics education, right? And what each of those iterations has done is forced us to focus more on critical thinking skills that are actually valuable to learning. And where I see the greatest advantage of this bias is by naming it, by making it very apparent that our job now as young learners is to identify and tear this bias apart and figure out where it goes wrong, right? So my background in education comes from being a high school and college debater. So that argumentative skill runs in my blood at a real high level, right? So when I look at anything, my first job is to question. So a lot of authors are now talking about that idea of not just vertically tracking where it goes, but horizontally reading across. So we're now really given, and to Ken's point, we struggled with literacy skills and internet literacy and all of these pieces that were there. And now we can't just struggle with them. We have to celebrate where we are and then move to that next place of where we need to go by teaching our teachers and then them in turn teaching our kids how to read vertically and horizontally across content. So where is this coming from? But now also, what are these other people in mirror fields also saying this? So what we have here as a result of the bias is an opportunity to, one, interrogate text in a level that I don't think has been done at the K-12 level, at least not outside of some of those specialized courses, but two, to really make our students not just consumers, but curators and critics of information. At the end of the day, if we're trying to do anything with kids, that's what we should do. So like Fei-Fei Li from Stanford, Dr. Lee talks about that AI is an amplifier of human endeavor, right? And I think there's no truer statement. It's an amplifier of good and bad. And so those biases get amplified by a giant megaphone. And this morning, and I can't remember the name of it, Mistral. If anybody's an AI wonk like I am and you read a lot of stuff, this was just released today. So it's the first AI program or generative, and they're not really generative yet. They're not that smart, but they're getting there. The first AI component that's actually it has no guardrails. So think like the old Google versus or Android store versus Apple. Apple had lots of guardrails, kept things succinct. Mistral's whole thing is we should be able to do what we want. So whether we want to protect kids from this or not, it's there. So the real question has to be not just how we're using AI, but how we're training and teaching and inviting our students to be a part of that conversation and start thinking more critically about that. And that skill set becomes an amplifier to their success, regardless of what they want to do. So I just want to say, like, for all the bad, there's opportunity in that to really highlight, bring forth, and surface that good.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your input on this really, really important topic. The time is flying, but there was a couple questions that came up that I'd like to try to address quickly if we can. They're not directly, but somewhat related. Ron had a question around guardrails that school leaders might put in place that can either hinder or help our teachers as they're working with this. And then we had another question as well about the complexity of the rules, regulations, laws, and other school-related data, and how generative AI might assist school leaders in managing that landscape. Does anyone have any thoughts there? I also do want to point out there's been many resources posted in the chat as well, and this is recorded, and we'll share this with everyone so they can have access to those.
Chris, can you repeat the question about school leadership and using AI in that process?
Absolutely. Let's see here. Wondering about school board policies regarding use of LLMs, GPTs in districts. What guardrails are we talking about and putting into place with regard to staff uploading PII to do data analysis? PI is just for an example.
Yeah, Colin, do you want to tackle that one first with the work that you guys have been doing?
So one of the things I always think it's interesting that we tend to, as principals, write rules for the kids who aren't behaving versus the ones who are. We keep telling people what they can't do instead of what they can do. And so I'm leery of trying to write a policy for something that doesn't exist tomorrow, right? Like the pace of change is happening so quickly. I'm not sure that there's plenty of laws from FERPA to SEPA to everything else in between, right? That regulate student privacy data, so on and so forth. So I think they give us a lot of the guardrails already. I think it's more about, to Tom's point, is how do we actually teach people to use technology responsibly? And really, it goes back to our ethics and morals anyways. I mean, in the sense of who are we as people and what do we represent? And so the questions we ask, the statements we make, the searches we perform reveal who we are and what we value and believe. And so how do we actually bring there? So it's like cell phone policies. When we start to do that, all we're doing is picking a fight on something that maybe doesn't, like, in bringing to light things that aren't as important. So I think there are some pieces from a policy point of view, but I think being more general at this point in around student privacy. So for example, a lot of teachers are all of a sudden saying, hey, I can speed up my recommendations for colleges and stuff by having ChatGPT or somebody else generate these. Well, the minute you put a student name into your prompt, you violated FERPA because you're giving information to whoever in the cloud is out there. So how do you actually, from a guardrails, make sure you just pose a question? So what would it could be as simple as recommendation for a student who is, and then list some variables and then see what it generates. And then you copy and paste and do from there. So I think there's pieces that way. That are the main things. And I know that's not probably what Ron was getting at as far as policy and stuff, but that's my own bias to name that.
Ron, I would tell you as a former superintendent, whenever you have something like this that can be fairly disruptive, because the kids, the ubiquitous access to technology now, whether it's mobile devices in their hands or, throughout a school building, especially post-COVID, Never make a rule that you can't enforce is a nice place to start, both as a building principal as well as a superintendent. And then also, you know, the old John Wooden quote of "Go slow to go fast." The people that I've seen struggle the most as leaders have been those who have had knee-jerk reactions to the technology, to the innovation. And so I think going slow and getting a landscape understanding of what is the impact truly in the classroom, getting teachers to understand that if kids are using these resources, what does it look like? It's really a paradigm shift for so many, because now your checks for understanding are very different. It really forces conversations about instructional design, about looking at learning rather than the structure of school, and helping educators who have said, wait a minute, the game is changing and I'm not authoring it. I'm not authoring the new rules of engagement. And what does that look like? And so I think developing a shared vision as a learning community, you know, both, and that includes your board of education, your parents, you know, that this is something that we can't just wish away or hold our breath and it's going to disappear. Let's take a really good look and walk around it, talk about how it can impact learning. How do we leverage it to benefit students? You know, you look at what Sal Khan is doing with tutoring alone, and the potential that every child in the country will have a personalized tutor in the next 12 months. That's a game changer, regardless of your geography and where you're at. And the opportunity there is powerful. If we want to talk about equity and instruction, there's an opportunity there as a learning community that you really step back and you say, how can we leverage this to benefit our kids? And if we truly believe every child every day, what does this tool provide us the opportunity to do for our kids? And so I think that's the go slow to go fast mindset, is not to knee jerk. And, you know, you're at Kent ISD, you know, the number of discussions and the, you know, the sky is falling all the way through. Let's just do whatever we want to do. It's a balance. And sometimes that middle ground is a pretty strong place to be as well. So as a former soup, I would say go slow to go fast, and be very aware, read a ton, but also don't make a rule that you can't win with.
Thank you, Dave. And I'd like to thank everyone. Sadly, our time is up.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll have continued conversations in other platforms. Carlos, people have asked you to post in the chat the 2 books. We'll keep this open so that can happen and we can capture it. And then we'll make sure anyone who wants to have a video of this presentation, they have that as well. Thank you so very much. Chris?
I just want to thank Lara for all her work on this. When I came to this, I was just a former teacher and a current teacher educator who knew very little about AI, but was very interested and kind of was volunteered into working with this. And she has been an absolute delight. 98% of what you've seen today was her work. So I want to thank her for all of that. And I look forward to working with her in the future.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope to see you again soon.
Bye-bye.